What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. I want to address something super quick, and that's if you watch my last video, which was the full review of the 2021 Sportster S model. Yes, I was dressed exactly the same. I'm shooting this video the same day, so don't come for me. I don't know why, but I just felt like I needed to put that out there before we got started. So today we're comparing the Sportster S to the Street Bob. The reason we're doing that is because based on Harley's website, these two motorcycles cost the same. And I say it that way because we're in kind of a strange time right now where dealers don't have a whole lot of inventory. There's literally 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm at Timms. There's more motorcycles on the floor. There's only 7 new bikes here total. They had 8 yesterday. This one came in today. So not a whole lot of inventory. For that reason, which is a completely separate video, prices aren't necessarily going to be MSRP. Not just here at Timms, but that's anywhere. Pick up the phone, call around. Some of the numbers are absolutely terrible. I'll go ahead and say that. But I would say, if you're serious about buying a bike, you live anywhere reasonable, driving distance to Timms, give them a call. They'll work with you the best they can. They'll do what they can for you. That said, let's jump into this review. So before we start breaking these things down in the comparison, we'll do the quick walk around so you can kind of see both of them from a few different angles. And I also want to talk a little bit more about why we're doing this. And that's because on paper, these bikes cost the same thing. MSRP is at the same exact thing on both of these bikes, but I can see entry level, beginner level, younger riders. You could be experienced. You don't have to be entry level or beginner level. As a matter of fact, neither of these bikes are perfect for a first timer. I would say you should have a little experience riding motorcycles, or be super responsible and respect the machine if you're going to get either one of these as a first bike, or even if you're upgrading from an entry-level bike. Please realize that these are the real deal. But I can see people being torn between these two, and that's why I chose to put these two against one another. Same money, kind of the same demographic looking at these two bikes. So I thought that this would be a good comparison to do. Kind of break down, point out a few things that may help you with your decision. All right, so we'll start on this Sportster S. We're just kind of looking at the front end here. You do get the inverted front end, which I'm a huge fan of. I like it on the lowrider. I like it on the Fat Bob. I like that Harley started doing this more and more. I hope they continue to do it. I would love to eventually see it make its way onto the touring bikes. Unfortunately, my gut feeling says we're still a few years away from that. Maybe not. You get the inverted front end on the Sportster S. You got a big wide tire, big LED light up there. The front of this bike does look pretty good. It kind of looks like a mini Fat Bob almost. So on the Street Bob, same thing. You get a single-sided disc. I don't know if we pointed that out on the Sportster S, which I don't hate that wheel, and I kind of like a dual disc, but I can appreciate that this is single disc and you can see that wheel a little better. It gives the bike a much better look. And after having test ridden that bike, this thing has plenty of stopping power. So I don't really see the single-sided brake being an issue. You will see you have the laced wheels on the Street Bob, which can be a little bit more maintenance, a little bit more trouble if you have a flat, etc. Obviously no inverted front end. And I've never really been a big fan of these boots that Harley puts on these forks. Obviously it's kind of gross looking right now just because it's been on there. You can cut those off, guys, if you want to. I'll try to lift it up. Doesn't look the best, and it definitely helps keep dust, dirt, and debris out of there, which is its purpose. It's not literally a cosmetic thing. I mean, it kind of is. Get it back up there where at least it looks decent. Kind of is cosmetic. I don't love the cosmetics of it, but I get the purpose behind it. When I said you could cut it off, I don't recommend it, but you could do it if you wanted to. You see you get a standard narrow, a little bit taller tire on this. Obviously you can see the mini apes, the single headlight, clean, simple, classy Harley Davidson front end. And this is kind of more the modern era. This is the direction I think a lot of these bikes are headed. And I know a lot of people don't care for that, but I also know that Harley knows that, and they're gonna continue to make stuff like this for a good while, if I had to guess. So one of the things when I've compared these bikes that people didn't like about the Street Bob and also the Fat Bob is going to be the fuel tank. 3.5 gallons is what you've got on there, and that's kind of what helps keep it sleek looking. But people didn't like that, especially compared to, say, the Lowrider S, which was 5 gallons. But on your Sportster S model, you have 3.1 gallons, so you're actually just a tiny bit bigger on this Street Bob. However, I don't view either of these bikes as super long distance bikes anyway. You can do it. It's not going to be super comfortable. By the time you need fuel, I think you're going to want to stop. So I wouldn't let that be a deciding factor. But one of the specs that I would say would come into play with this is the weight on these two. So your Sportster S is 504 pounds, whereas your Street Bob is right at 650. So you're going to be a whole 150 pounds more on the Street Bob. Now, if you've been riding motorcycles for a while, you're an experienced rider, you probably already know 150 pounds is a lot of weight. So like if you had to pick it up, but riding it, you don't really notice that much. I mean, to me, it feels about the same. And I know there's some trade-offs there for performance, etc. But just, you know, so for those newer riders that don't know, sounds like a big difference, makes a difference in some areas, but it's not as big as it sounds. I don't know if this will translate on video. Yeah, there's no way to get the right angle. But your seat height on this Sportster S is going to be 28.9, whereas your Street Bob is going to be right at 25 or so. So a couple more inches. If you've got a shorter inseam, clearly that's going to be one of the better options for you, because that seat on that S is about as low profile as any seat I've ever seen. Not to the point that it's uncomfortable, but again, take my opinion with a grain of salt on that, because I've only put 10 miles on this bike. Just saying, if you're a little more vertically challenged, the Street Bob may be a little bit better fit for you right off the bat. Now, I've pulled the seat off the Street Bob, and I'll tell you why in just a second. When we were talking about the front end earlier, I really should have pointed out that this is an adjustable front end. Here on the Sportster S, you can kind of tune that. You get what you get on the Street Bob unless you go in there and start changing stuff. You don't have any settings externally to change. Not the case here on the rear. So you take the seat off. For those that don't know, it's literally just that one screw, the screw that's sitting on the seat, just screws in right there and the seat pops right off. You're gonna get a wrench when you buy this bike, and it's gonna adjust right here. You can see the numbers on there. Check your manual, it'll tell you where you need to set it based on your weight, passenger weight, luggage, things like that. Whereas on your Sportster S model, they make it super easy with this external knob, which I'm a big fan of. You turn it and it's gonna click, and that's how you know what setting you're on. You back it out either one way or another. Again, check your manual, see where it needs to be set up based on your weight, etc. So both bikes, the rear suspension is adjustable. However, on the Street Bob, you cannot adjust the front, whereas you can on the Sportster S. Now, starting in 2021, the current model year, the Street Bob started shipping from the factory with this passenger pillion and passenger pegs on it. Previous years, the Street Bob did not come set up for a passenger, and depending on which seat and which pegs you went with, it wasn't hard to end up spending like $500 to get set up for a passenger. So it was really nice that Harley decided to do that this year. And I know you're looking at this pillion saying, oh, it's not really a lot. I mean, it's not. I do have really big hands, but still, it's not a lot of seat, but it's better than nothing. it's able to accommodate a passenger without you having to spend any extra money. So it is what it is. On the Sportster S, man, I'll be honest, when I first saw this thing in pictures and videos, even when I saw it in person, I said, oh, well, there's literally no way you can carry a passenger because where are they going to sit? However, I looked in the parts and accessories catalog. I'll throw it up real quick on the screen right now. You can get a passenger backrest, passenger pillion, and passenger pegs. Now, you are going to spend a little bit of money to do all three, but it is possible. I'm not entirely sure on mounting because this piece just pops out. I wouldn't think the seat would just pop into that little hole. Maybe it does, or maybe it clips in here, just kind of like the normal seat. If you're familiar with the Harley seat, just kind of has a tongue that goes down in there, and then a secondary bolt or something that would go on the back. And I apologize for all those fingerprints on there. I start with these bikes clean, but I just did the full review of this bike, which if you haven't watched, you should go watch just the full review of the Sportster S. But I thought it was super, super important to point out the fact that if you plan on doing two-up riding, you're already set up out of the gate. With this one, you're not. I gotta be honest, I'm not completely sure how much comfort your passenger is gonna have here. I know we said that didn't look like a lot, but when you compare it to this, there's a little more options, I would say, for rear seats, because you can do a two-up seat, just one big solid seat with a big nice pad on the back. There's tons of options. Some of them don't look the greatest. You kind of trade when it comes to seats. Most of the time you're going to sacrifice looks for comfort, especially if you want like actual like pillow filling seats. It's going to look terrible, but people don't see it when you're on the bike anyway. So do whatever makes you happy. Do what's going to make your passenger happy. But just note that you have absolutely nothing on the Sportster S. So probably not a huge deal to some. I do want to point out the license plate / tail light situation. On the Street Bob, you'll notice that turn signals and tail lights are built into one. They're kind of off to the side here. There are options to streamline that and kind of make that look even better. Your license plate is just off to the side here, which has always bugged me. I prefer like the lay flat brackets that go on the fender. A little bit of work, a little bit of cash, but really cleans up the lines on this bike. But man, when you compare it to whatever Harley was thinking when they made this, the Street Bob actually doesn't look bad. So I'm sure there will be some aftermarket companies come out with some stuff. I think there's tons of money to be made because I feel like 100% of people that see this are not gonna like this. To me, it kind of looks like a wheelie bar. Like if you're gonna take this thing to the drag strip or something. I don't like it. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't have all the answers to remedy it, but I feel like Harley engineers could have spent a little bit more time and effort on that and clean that up. Like I said, to some people, maybe it's not a big deal. But for me personally, it's like the tail end of this bike looks really clean, kind of cafe racer looking with the short fender, the exhaust. It's just that license plate light setup kills it. And then talking about different seat options and stuff, also made me realize something that's going to be huge to point out when comparing these two is the Street Bob has been out so long and it's such a popular bike that there is endless amounts of aftermarket stuff for this thing, be it seats, exhaust, bars, wheels, just literally any piece on that bike. There are tons and tons of aftermarket companies as well as options from Harley Davidson to change that bike, customize that bike, and make it your own. As of right now, this Sportster S is brand new. The only people that make stuff for this are Harley Davidson, and that's kind of the advantage of making something brand new, not letting anybody see it or get their hands on it. Companies are just now getting their hands on this bike to make new exhaust, make bars, make all the different stuff. They need to get the specs, they need to get the measurements, they need to do R&D and test fit stuff. So if you're big into customization, you're either going to have to wait a little while to do stuff to the Sportster S, or I would say go towards the Street Bob because you would literally never run out of stuff to look at to do to that bike. Now clearly we cannot do a comparison of these two bikes without talking about these two engines. I absolutely love the 114 Milwaukee 8. I love the Milwaukee 8 in general. I mean, I'm a twin cam guy, but the Milwaukee 8's less heat, more power, smoother, a little quieter where you want it to be quiet, you know, less engine noise. It's great, man. It really is a nice motor. That 114 out of the box makes really good power. That's a super quick little bike, but it's not this. This motor is something, this thing is on another level, just like when I reviewed the Pan America. I mean, Harley has taken things to another level when they came out with this engine. This thing makes so much power. This bike in particular, 120 horsepower, 94 foot-pounds of torque, and that's out of the box with stock everything. There's no Harley on this dealership floor right now, and we're looking at a CVO Road Glide right there, the Sport Glide that we've built, you know, done the air cleaner, 2-in-1 tuner on it. There is literally no bike on this floor right now that makes anywhere close to the power of this, what people are calling little bike right here. There's definitely no bike on this floor that's coming close to the speeds that this thing is able to reach either. Now, does it sound like a Harley? Absolutely not. Can you change the exhaust to make it sound like a Harley? When I say sound like a Harley, conventional Harley, the sound that most people think of. And the answer to that is definitely no. This thing has its own sound. It's very unique. I've tried in the past to start bikes on this channel. It's just the audio just does not translate. You just got to take my word for it. It doesn't sound like anything impressive. I'll be completely honest. I don't love the sound. I don't know what exhaust would do to this thing. I know with the Pan America, which like we said is the same engine, the Screaming Eagle exhaust from Harley did make a big difference to me. But the fact that the Pan America's been out for a while, I think we're slowly starting to see more exhaust options. I've yet to hear one personally, but this being the same motor, I think that's kind of giving people a little bit of an advantage as far as figuring out what to do to the exhaust to give it its own unique sound, but also let it sound good. So we're really comparing apples to oranges with these two motors. I mean, they could not be more different. Both really good in my opinion, and I mean, from the little bit of time that we've seen this new Revolution engine out, so far, not really any major issues, nothing to be concerned about. The Pan America had some heat things that ended up being something with the radiator, I believe, which was a fairly easy fix. As far as I know, they were just replacing the radiator cap and something with the hose. Nothing major, nothing to really be concerned about. The Milwaukee 8 been out for several years now, very reliable. You know what you're gonna get with that. Yeah, there was some issues with the sump, the oiling, stuff like that. Harley's revised and revised and revised, and I think that's finally sorted out. Not an issue any longer. So reliability is not really a problem with this. It's just, do you wanna go really, really fast, be super sporty, then I would lean towards this Sportster S, man, because that's what it is. It's essentially a sport bike with Harley Davidson on the side. And like we've said, not that this thing is going to be slow, not that you're going to feel like your bike doesn't have a lot of performance, because this bike is great in all areas. It's just they're two completely different animals when it comes to those engines. All right, so really quickly, before I give you guys my opinion on which one I would personally take out of these two bikes, I'd love for you to leave a comment down below. Let me know which one you're gonna choose and why. So my choice comes down to a couple factors. One being styling. Like I said in my review of the Sportster S, the more time I spend with it, the more it grows on me. I never absolutely hated it from the get-go, but it is a bike that for most people is gonna take some warming up to, especially if you've been around Harley Davidson for a long time. It's not traditional in any way, shape, or form. Yes, it does have a lot of characteristics of a V-Rod. At first glance, spend a little time with it, go into the dealership, see it in person. I think you'll kind of change your mind on that, but I get it's kind of not the conventional Harley Davidson look. It doesn't need to be, it doesn't have to be. Not every Harley has to look like it was built in 1940, but that is gonna be one of the deciding factors for me, and that's just because I spend so much freaking time on Instagram. I've seen so many street bobs just really done up, super clean, super nice. That's going to be one of the reasons that I'm going to lean towards the street bob. Now, if you're looking for all-out, pure, raw speed and performance, I think the choice is pretty simple here, and that's going to be this one. I'm not going to tell you that you couldn't get this bike as peppy, as responsive, as powerful, and as fast as this one, but you're going to throw some money at it to do it. So if your goal is just to go fast, have a very high performance driven bike, I think it's pretty clear you should go with this one. And that's one of the reasons that I'm going to go with the Street Bob, is after test riding this bike, I found it was really hard for me to keep my hand out of that throttle. It was just a little too much fun. I don't know that I quite trust myself. Not that the 114's a slouch and can't get you in trouble as well. But this thing is like a rocket ship. I can just see myself getting into some trouble. Best case scenario, getting some speeding tickets. Worst case scenario, kind of riding above my head and get myself in some hot water. So mainly for those two reasons, I'm going to end up going to the Street Bob. But like I said, leave me a comment down below. Let me know which one you guys are choosing and why. And as always, thanks for watching.